1 minute.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Jeffrey Williams. I'll be moderating this panel of incredible humans. And we're here to really celebrate Bicycle Day, celebrate this initiation of bringing LSD into the world in a conscious way, and how that has impacted culture, how it's impacted human consciousness, and how it's really initiated a massive change in breaking us out of what you could consider norm. But what I want to talk about today is that, obviously we're here at the Chambers Project Gallery. We're talking about psychedelic arts and culture as a movement. So my background is in anthropology and specifically around the nervous system and brain. And I don't think there has been a culture on Earth that hasn't been influenced by psychedelics in some way or shape or form. So to bring it into our modern context, we have found ourselves in this resurgence of awareness and accessibility to plants and molecules in a way that we've never had access to before, right? And that comes with both opening this incredible opportunity for us all, and I think it'll be interesting to explore with these artists and friends today how can we usher in this incredible opportunity, utilizing psychedelics, utilizing the art and the culture and the expression that it frees up in us. And I think, as Metzner likes to refer to it, as rather than psychedelic, as consciousness expansion. So how do we look into consciousness expansion in a way that's sustainable, that can help us, turn the tides towards a better world, one that we can regenerate? I'd like to just offer a chance for each of you guys to introduce yourselves and then just jump in. Sound good?
Hi, everybody. My name is Chelsea Rose, and I am the executive director of the Zendo Project. I don't know how many of you are familiar with our project, but we go out to large events like Burning Man, and we provide psychedelic care and emotional support to the communities who attend a lot of these transformational events. And I'm a therapist by trade. And yeah, just happy to be here and talk about the creative way that we can care for one another when in altered states, and the amazing transformation that can come out of these beautiful processes. So, thank you.
Hi, I'm Jen Stark, a visual artist, multimedia. I do animation, painting, sculpture, immersive experiences. I do all sorts of stuff. And I also volunteered at Zendo during Burning Man, and I was a greeter, and it was like mind-blowing just to see like how necessary it was. Like people were tripping, and like they really needed guidance and help, and it was like a safe place at these intense festivals. So just side note, Zendo is amazing. But yeah, my work is based on nature, math, psychedelia, all that fun stuff. And I'm excited to be here.
My name is William Ben Susan, aka the Gaslamp Killer, a musician, DJ, performer, and I'm fam with the Chambers Project. I'm the resident music person, the resident sound curator on top of all this incredible art, and it's a unbelievable honor to be in this room every time it's filled with the greatest art of our generation, and even sometimes our elders that I get to be around the greatest art ever, in my opinion, humble opinion. Thanks for having me.
Hello, my name is Mear-One. I'm a metaphysical surrealist, as I call myself. I started out as a graffiti artist in the early or mid 80s, early 90s, and started taking acid pretty early on, and that affected my graffiti art, kind of sent me into a different branch of that reality. And it caused me to get further away from just the lettering into like a whole kind of mental scenario, and it turned me more so, I guess, into a storyteller. I like to have a narrative kind of philosophy streaming through my canvas. This is my piece over here, the one in the middle here. And I'm very happy to be here.
Hello, my name is Damon Soule. I'm an art guy. I got a couple pieces here. I live off-grid in the woods with my cosmic partner. We got 16 chickens, 2 dogs, and 3 cats.
That sounds
Exactly.
that sounds psychedelic. Well, I'm gonna just riff off a little bit what Mear-One, that you just, when you were that young and getting to have that initiatory experience. I know for me, I just grew up thinking education was a waste of time and joke, and I just couldn't believe that we were being forced to learn this stuff that I had no idea how I was gonna ever find use of. And so for me, it wasn't until I found psychedelics that it was really like, oh, all the meaning-making capacities are already within me, and all of this is a distraction. And so that really was the beginning of my education. And I think, as I was talking to Chelsea earlier, we were saying how art in itself is education, right? Because in optic art, what we're here experiencing today, it's an experience. And as a person who's really interested in the brain and nervous system, all of us, we go through these developmental processes which set up like our circuitry, which becomes, and some people call it the default mode network, some people call it the subconscious, but it's what's basically running the show all the time. And especially if you're distracted, the subconscious is what's been developed, so it's just going to run the show. And very little of our conscious mind, and we talked about consciousness expansion, right? The conscious mind can only track a very small amount, a very few number of bits of information compared to the subconscious. So I think for me, it was an initiation into expanding what that conscious mind could track and open itself to, and it like removed the filters of the subconscious so I could actually see what was present and what's always present. So if any of you like to share an experience about that for you, like how that initiated you or how you feel like it broke you out of the normal culturization.
Yeah, I always knew there was something wrong with the world. I didn't really like school. I loved kindergarten, that was great, but the moment I went into regular education, I knew there was something really wrong. And, just standing on the street corner in Hollywood, looking at traffic go by, I knew there was something wrong. And for years, I just kept growing up feeling, watching my grandmother yell at the TV at Ronald Reagan, or, looking at my mother, who was a hippie who raised me with this consciousness. She was an artist, and just understanding that there's something wrong and we're getting screwed here, but I didn't really know why. And when I took LSD for the first time, I figured out why. It hit me like powerfully and instantly. It's like it was like an apocalypse in the cathartic sense. Like the room split in half, it opened up, and behind it was the real story, and it was kind of horrifying to me, because some of my trips have not just been beautiful, wonderful. Some of my trips have been horrific and hard to get through. And because I kind of sought it out, I liked it. I wanted to see it. I wanted to know, So, yeah, I encourage everybody to seek the apocalypse within themselves.
Mear is also the most courageous. And he is a storyteller, and he can cash those checks and back that shit up. So I listen to my friend when he speaks, I'll tell you that. Oh, I did grab the mic. You handed it to me, sir. Sorry. Figured you had something to say. I was a latchkey kid, like so many of us. My parents had me at 42 and 48. My mom wanted to save the marriage, and so she tricked my dad on Valentine's Day and took out her diaphragm. And she got pregnant. My dad moved back in, and now him and I are best friends. We were always best. He's the man. He's 90, and I'm 42, and so it's crazy, but thank God he's strong as an ox. And they kind of failed with the other kids, so they just kind of let me do whatever I wanted. And, you know, they grounded me here and there for misbehaving, but I'd climb out the window and come back at 7 in the morning and go to school and do it all over again. So I discovered psychedelics very young, too young, in my opinion. I only say that because, you know, we learn later about how the brain develops, your nervous system. It's a delicately divine, perfect creation, human beings, you know, and definitely wish I had a little more guidance and a little more protection, but it is what it is. You can't turn back time. And I had prolific, profound experiences, similar, very challenging, and then you discover the secrets of the universe and forget them the next morning. And so I had like those experiences at very young age, which I believe, you know, I look at my friends now doing psychedelic assisted therapy in their 40s because they didn't abuse or even recreationally use psychedelics. So their entire energy field changed, let go of so much trauma and so much shame and so much guilt. And I envy these people that were able to use this as a medicine rather than just a celebratory rites of passage, whatever, you know, I won't go into that part, but I believe in the power of it. It changed the world, psychedelics of all kinds. We needed it. We still need it. I advocate for it, but I also believe that setting is very important, and a lot of us jump in the deep end and realize in the middle of the dive, there's no water in the pool. So, you know, have a reverence and a respect that is a healthy fear. Too little, too late, unfortunately for me, but
Then you realize there is no pool either.
then you realize there is no pool either. Mear-One, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, that was a very roundabout way, but that's how you get used to that while I'm up here.
What's your name again?
I'm William, the Gaslamp Killer, Ben Susan.
And he's going to be DJing later tonight. I was kind of the opposite. I grew up in a religious home and didn't really start experimenting with stuff until like mid-20s and on. I think I did my first acid trip, like, I was probably 23. And it was just like, you know, like a light switch goes off and you're like, you realize that you're connected to everything. And I realized that the art that I was already making was like part of this world, and it just like helped develop that. And then in my 30s, I started diving a little deeper with like, you know, DMT and like those worlds, and just realizing that like spiritual world beyond. I was like, I've been here before. Like I feel like this is where we all come from, and it's a beautiful thing. Yeah, it's I guess I haven't had any crazy traumatic experiences with it yet, but you never know.
It's so cool that this came naturally, and then you took drugs, and we're like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool. So one of my favorite things about her.
Thank you.
So one of the things that you just mentioned, which I think is so perfect to lean into, is I think so much of our world is grooming us and conditioning us to look outside. And I know for me, psychedelics, it's always been a process of remembering. It's that feeling like, oh, I'm remembering. Like you said, I know this place. Oh, I've been here, right? So has that come through in your art, or has that come through in other ways? You know, is it like, are these reflections of the remembering, or are they like external expressions of something else, or how does that, you guys have, I'm just curious about that, because I know remembering is like the key word that come out of so many times, like this just feels like I'm remembering.
I can say a little bit of something to that, Jeffrey. What I was thinking about when you all were telling your stories about when you started using psychedelics, as I was thinking back, I started using psychedelics in my teen years. And, you know, the first time I did LSD, I was expecting like a Beavis and Butthead Do America sort of experience. And I was out in nature and I was with friends, and it was something so very different than that. And I think what really came through for me was it was a remembering. It was a remembering about how connected we are to each other and how much that deepened my friendships, which I think actually has been a big driver of the work that I have wanted to do in the world around caring for others. And that's a little bit of a different art form than the art we see here. But that, I think, was the real remembering that came forward for me. And it actually made me curious to ask you all, like in the experience of doing psychedelics, when you think about remembering or, you know, you feel connected to something deeper, whether that's people or art, like what is that connection that you find that really drives your creativity? So.
Hand it to Damon.
I forgot the question. About remembering. Yeah, I mean, I've had that experience too, the remembering stuff where you're like, oh, right, the whole thing, and then you forget it. This all the secrets and keys and the things. And I've had a couple experiences where it's revealed, the whole thing is revealed, and it's fucking terrifying. The infinity, the never ending, no escape. And that part freaks me out, you know, sometimes. I actually enjoy the trips where they're fun and bubbly and goofy. The scary ones are crazy, but Robert Anton Wilson describes it best that psychedelics give you like a knowledge squared, right? So you can go to this other place and experience the world in a totally different lenses. And then you can reflect on yourself in the normative state. And when you come back, then you can reflect on yourself in this other state. And so you've effectively, you know, squared your understanding of the world. Each of the psychedelics or the hallucinogens or all they all have their own particular veil that they lift. You know, it's like this flip book world where it's, you know, you think it's this, and then suddenly it's this. It's very strange. I've even after 30 years, I've yet to really kind of put my finger on any of it. It's very ephemeral.
How did that inform your art a little bit?
I think the first time I took LSD, I was 16, so I can't think of something that it didn't affect. It's completely changed me. Like I can remember being able to, during this first trip, make these like connections where I was like, oh, and if that's that, then you know, and that stayed on and never turned off. And it's a little weird because in some ways it's like, is that a good thing or I don't know, you know, it just is. Once, you know, you buy the ticket, you take the ride and you don't get off, you know? So, or you really get off. Yeah, I think it's once you do it, you can't go back, right? It's not something you can go back. So, yeah, probably just say, yeah, it's great. It's a good thing. Good thing.
You know, it's one of my favorite things that I've experienced through taking psychedelics is that remembering process, finding myself on the floor in a fetal position or crawling like a child and wanting to cry and not knowing why and feeling like I've lost something, that I've just found it, that I was an ape scratching my head and now I'm a human looking at myself from another direction. This cathartic thing, you know, that feels like something the ancients went through, that actually did something different for them than we're actually currently doing it with. And I'm trying to tap into that, and it's powerful, and it makes me want to be more of a human being and experience life as independent thinking, little spaceship cruising through this thing, like disconnecting from the hive mind and just discovering my personal path, you know, and it's been very helpful to that, because it seems like the psychedelic is beckoning you to come in. There is a part of it that wants you to join the oneness, the singularity of God-mindedness, but then there's this other thing that you're like a nail clipping off of the greater, and you yourself have the whole thing within you. And so to kind of wake up and realize that it's like an implosion in a sense. What comes in through that implosion is all this truth that you've been denied from the world that's educated us and sculpted who we are, in a sense. That's my favorite thing about it, is it is a spiritually awakening process that shows you that you're not even in your body, that your body is just this checkpoint that you can check in with, but you're everything, in a sense.
I think when I introduced myself, the fear and the reverence were the main point. But I remember being too young to be on anything besides a fucking apple juice box or on a pony or some shit, something wholesome and cute. But I remember, dancing at a rave and feeling for the first time like in control of my body in a way that I had never felt. And as a live performer, getting that first taste of oneness in the avatar and being able to like move like I had never moved in my entire life, that became the thing that it was all about for the early years before I started producing and engineering and performing. It was like, I always say, like, I'm a hip hop person, but I play music from all over the world, tons of genres. But I will say that in the 4 elements of hip hop, for instance, rapping, graffiti, DJing, and breakdancing, right? So graffiti requires cans. They cost money. Most of you fuckers steal them, you delinquents. But, spray cans cost money. DJing is, the barrier for entry is $250 now, but it used to be very expensive to get equipment. So that was like untouchable, right? But then rapping and dancing, you could just recite poetry or freestyle or do whatever you want in your parents' in your room. Like, you didn't need any money or anyone around even. And then dancing, it's like that's the first thing a child does is they rap, bah, 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 and they move around and they just childlike wonder flowing from you. It's incredible. And it's free. So I remember being on the dance floor and not having any idea what I was doing or who I was, or I didn't have a big friends group. I never fit in. I never belonged. And then I started moving in a way that I had never moved. And I just, every weekend I went back for more dancing, not more drugs. And the drugs were just free everywhere. LSD was 25 cents a hit when I started experimenting. So it wasn't a big deal to get it for free. And I was the kid brother in a lot of scenarios. So I remember connecting with my body on the dance floor and then finally feeling like I'm going to get in the middle of that circle with all that cipher, we called it, all these dancers just expressing themselves, freeing their selves for that moment and having, courage, but also camaraderie and the feeling of being safe enough to just be a fool in the middle of this group of people moving around. That was like the first time that was the first time I felt like I went God mode. And then I understood like the performance enhancing aspect of this incredible potion from this dropper, from this fucking wizard in a cape at the rave that gave me way too much. But just being like in the middle of the circle, and to circle back to my point, no pun intended, all of a sudden I was cool, I belonged, I had friends, people wanted to be around me, we started dancing together, and all of a sudden I had a group of friends from that moment on for the rest of my life that are still my friends because we all danced together, and the tribal society is missing from our lives, and that 150-person group, the non-nuclear family, the children were never alone, and the parents were never fully responsible because the tribe took the kids, and having that kind of like tribal-like dancing with the crew and the community and moving together to one beat and one rhythm, and having this incredible realization that through this subculture and counterculture, we could bring that back into the sphere of reality for modern day human society. It's so rare and so beautiful. And since then, I never discounted that, and it never went away. Even though I haven't used psychedelics recreationally in a very long time, I still am better because of it, and it changed my life in that way. I think the physical body, it's just nothing like it. It's so awesome. It also works with MDMA and other things as well. It's not exclusive to one substance, but that was just something I just thought of touching on.
I mean, embodiment, right, is such a huge thing. And to actually have something that you can engage with, that brings you into your body and allows you to accept yourself. Because I know that so much of the process, for me at least, was owning, like, this is it. Like, this is the spacesuit I get. I'm the infinite and the one, and this is the one I chose. And it became a choice rather than kind of on the victim end of it. And you brought up Robert Anton Wilson, and I don't know if he was the first to use it, but I wanted to talk about reality tunnels a little bit. And we're all in our own, whether you want to call it neurological reality tunnel. And one of the things, and I've, as a parent of 4 kids, and I know you're a parent and some of you other might be parents too, one of the things that I'm looking at right now, just as a cultural piece, is that we're all in our own reality tunnels, but the more that these kids and everyone is on these reality tunnels, that this becomes this one reality tunnel, and it's not even a reality tunnel, right? It's a commercial
It's the
tunnel.
algorithm
Exactly.
reality tunnel.
And so as psychedelics give us a chance to break out of the conditioning or the conforming that we've been groomed into as a personal reality tunnel and identity, and all of a sudden we're way more than that. And I think that there's a place, but this is where I think the Zendo piece comes in, is because I think we look back at the 50s, 60s, and 70s and how that went wrong. It was mostly just because of the government, taking a few small events and media blowing them up. But how can we actually care for our cultures and create an initiation so that these next generations can expand their consciousness and see their reality in themselves outside of this collectively incredibly limited reality tunnel that wants everyone to look the same, act the same, like the same things, all have dopamine issues, all be stuck in their hindbrains, living through their limbic system. I mean, we have a whole brain, and most, like 98% of people tested are not using their human brain at all. It's all mammalian level fight or flight, predator prey games. But one thing is that psychedelics do, and I was able to demonstrate this last year on a live demonstration with some EEG equipment and DMT. What it does is it allows for brain waves, are when you have neurons that are all spinning in like a big wave. So you get a bunch of neurons firing at the same speed, and they call that a brain wave. And so most people are stuck in what's called beta brain waves, and they're also locked into their hindbrain. So an older part of their brain, one hemisphere dominant. And what that does is now everyone is perceiving their reality through this predator-prey lens, through fight, flight, or freeze games, right? And it's very limited. And when we were able to use DMT, we saw that what happens is, first, all the brainwave patterns go away. There's nothing. That doesn't mean there is an activity. There's totally activity going on, but there's just a lot of activity. It's happening all over the place, but it's in smaller amounts. So you see these little sparks, and then all of a sudden the prefrontal cortex lights up, and you get gamma. You get these bursts of gamma that are going off, and they're beautiful bursts. And so it connects, and the whole prefrontal cortex lights up. And at the same time, the participants are able to describe the sort of connectedness, the geometries, the feeling of being surrounded, held, and warm, and realizing that all of the stuff that was, heavy, burdensome, distracting, was all silly, right? It wasn't really them. It wasn't really the thing that was, or in their heart, right? And so I'm just curious. I know that for me, the art, the music, the embodiment, the dancing has all been a huge part of that. And you were mentioning the drumming, right? If you go back any culture around the world, it was either stomping your feet or dancing. It's like, pounding rocks. And we would take ourselves into these altered states where we would break out of the norm, the reality tunnel of whatever's accepted, and break into something that's always here. It's ever present. And psychedelics sort of pull those filters back so that we get to experience it a little bit more. But how do you think we can work together as artists, therapists, healers to create safe and potent spaces of transformation so these next generations of humans can really hopefully thrive?
I mean, I hate to be a pessimist, but anything good becomes corrupted. You know, I think it's up to communities, like smaller communities, to do this. I'm even like hesitant about all the, you know, maps and stuff, and the pharmaceutical companies getting involved. And I like the underground culture stuff, man. Keep it like, keep it real. But at the same time, it's like, that's not for me to decide, you know, but that's where I land on it. I think festival culture is really interesting, especially, you know, when they're small, tight groups, and having young people initiated into the psychedelic places, and they're doing it with other people who are, you know, kind and empathetic. You know, it freaked me out the first couple festivals. Like, why is everyone trying to fucking hug me? You know, it wasn't something I grew up doing a lot. And then I was like, oh, actually, this is nice. You know, whoa, why? You know, there's always going to be that, right? It might not be the festivals of the 2000s, you know, and the raves of the 90s. I don't know what the next phase of it is, but it's that. It's underground communities initiating people into this, hopefully in a safe way. And, you know.
I agree with you. I mean, I think if we think about it, clinical settings, you know, are such a small portion of the use that's happening, right? It's like 90% of use that's happening is recreational, and festivals are a great example of that. And so I agree. I feel like it's how do we as communities come together and take care of each other. And that's why I really love the peer-based model, because clinical has its place, right? It helps with public perception, and, you know, especially when things get really severe, it's definitely great to have that tool. But, you know, one of the main purposes of the Zendo is to educate people on how to care for one another. And so when peer care is available and people know how to take care of one another, you know, just the power of being in one of these really dark moments and just having someone be there for you, you know, how powerful just simply that can be. What's wonderful about the skill sets of peer support is they're incredibly accessible, right? It's really actually a lot about learning that you don't have to do anything. You know, you can just be there. And as a do culture, right, we're always like, we must fix it and we want to make the difficulty go away. But actually, there can be great opportunities in those difficult moments if we are safe. You know, if we have that foundation of safety, then there can be opportunities to, you know, gain great insight that can change our lives, like a lot of what you guys have been talking about. So it's just wonderful to think about how simple it can be to care for one another, and that those skills are really accessible. Yeah. So I don't know if anyone wants to add anything.
I mean, Brian Chambers, thank you for cultivating this amazing community. This is insane. I grew up mainly showing my artwork in, like, you know, traditional art galleries. There was, you know, there's like gatekeeping and pretension and all that stuff, and it gets really tiring after a while. So it's really cool to see this like psychedelic community come together. It's like, it's very welcoming. There's, you know, no gatekeeping. It's all positivity, and it's a breath of fresh air, and it's really cool that it's in Grass Valley. What a beautiful place. But yeah, just having more of these communities and having people come together and welcome each other and help each other, it's awesome.
Yeah, could we actually just, each of you guys talk a little bit, because this community has been huge for me as well. Brian's a really good friend, but just being able to see how, I mean, one, the kind of perseverance that it takes to create and hold a community like this, and to go through all of the shit and all of the ups and downs that comes along with dealing with a bunch of crazies like us, and to keep going anyways, because there's something that's driving that guy, and he sees something, and he's seen it for a very long time, of like how this does make a difference in people's lives, how this does open minds and expand consciousness. So maybe you just shared a little bit about your art and about your experience with the Chambers Project and in this psychedelic arts movement. Would you like to each share a little bit about that, your experience with that?
I just did want to add one thing, though. Childlike wonder and enthusiasm, some of the spirit that you get when you're frolicking with your friends on a little bit of whatever you choose. Without it, I go to Jen's karaoke nights at her studio, and she brings a bunch of old farts together to sing our favorite songs. Don't need to be on anything to freaking sing really poorly, whatever you want, and just be a fool. And thank you, Jen, for harvesting or cultivating that community for us to be silly, because I think that's so important.
Yeah, just
I just was I was holding that one for her.
he's got the childlike wonder piece going on. I was just asking to tell us a little bit about your art and your connection and expression through this community and how that's going.
Thank you, yes. I started out in the hip-hop community, and it's when keeping it real goes wrong is a very powerful force in the hip-hop community, because the ego and the toxic masculinity and the fatherless children or the angry, hurt kids everywhere, it's very hard for them to just to open themselves and be vulnerable and be silly in general. They want to grow up too fast. They want to be hard. They want to be tough and all that. So I did get to get outside of that a few times growing up, but Shepard Fairey was the first person to invite me to DJ when I was 17 at his art show in San Diego, and I was a big fan of Shep and Obey and the Black Market Gallery, and all of this stuff was being cultivated around me when I was 12 to 16. I was starting DJing, I was collecting, really trying to get in somewhere, and the hip-hop scene, it was welcoming enough, but it was a little toxic in that way. And then Shepard was like, I like what you do. Just come play. No one's going to look at you. They're going to look at my art, but you're going to be setting the tone for the evening. And I hadn't experienced that before. So he invited me to play, and I was able to play Portishead and Massive Attack, into Jimi Hendrix and the Doors, into Bob Marley and Nirvana, into all these records that I listened to throughout that part of my early teens. And everybody was just grooving and moving, and it's cool, background music, and looking at the art. And then I started, scratching a little bit or trying a little harder to maybe put on a show. And the next thing you know, the art show turned into my show, and I had everyone in the gallery facing me, and it was like, oh my God, I don't have to play top 40. I don't have to play popular music. I don't have to be cool, follow trends, just be yourself. And it was like the first eye-opening moment. And it was a bright neon fucking gallery. There wasn't any mood lighting. It was all about showing his pieces. So it was, all of a sudden I created a whole dance party, and it was like, oh my God, that's the type of scene that when you could play with artists, I'm feeding off the pieces in this room. I was feeding off the pieces in that room. And the graffiti inherently is a rambunctious culture, people bucking back against the system, and you have advertisements penetrating you every day, and music you don't like. That's one of the few things that can literally violate you without your consent, and it's never ending in every restaurant you go to. Horrible music. I'm trying to chew on beat, listening to trance at a restaurant, trying to have a peaceful. So it really is nice when you get to be around people who understand what you do and get to share that visual with the sonic tonic. We're creating it together in this beautiful way. And so I've been able to experience that over and over and over again. I started a club called the Low End Theory in LA. Mear-One was painting live on stage while we were doing our performances. And ever since I was a kid, we always had an element of graffiti while we were doing our music. So for me, as the only non-artist who can barely write his name or draw a stick figure, I would say that without the visual aspect, I don't think I would have found my true self if it wasn't for art, albeit not the most psychedelic. But then I got invited into more scenes where it just kept on getting trippier and more interesting. And then the fucking king of the psychedelic curation, Brian Chambers, brought it all together. Yeah.
Yeah, when we say what can we do for the psychedelic community to help other people, I think this is an example of what we can do. You can't really help anybody. You can only be an example and help yourself. And people like Timothy Leary weren't created by a group of people that needed him. He recognized his position in the world, and he stepped out and stepped into a place, and he did what he needed to do, just like Ram Dass or any of these cats. When you're tripping hard, though, I will say this. I've been tripping very hard before, and what I reject is people coming up trying to help me. I really don't like that. I'm like, the fuck away from me. You're not in my zone, and you're freaking me out. I'm having a hard time, and I deserve to have a hard time. I want to freak out. I'm like somewhere between God and the devil, and I'm freaking out. I'm on fire. I'm melting. I'm puking. I'm crying. I'm laughing, and I'm going hysterical, and I'm losing my mind. I'm flying through outer space at the speed of light, blowing through planets, and I don't even get to say hi. And I think we need to do that. I think that is the point of psychedelics. You have to go into the woods and get lost and save yourself. Because if you can't do that, you should not be taking psychedelics. The population of this planet is not fucking ready for this shit. And look what marijuana legalization did to the marijuana industry. I mean, it destroyed the movement. It's dead. I know some of the biggest growers in Los Angeles that have multi-million-dollar growing industries, and they can't sell their weed no more because no one wants to even buy weed anymore because people don't care. They're so fucked up on Instagram and so confused and looking for someone to tell them what to do that we need to be aware of that. We need to seek within ourselves. We need to separate. We need to de-educate ourselves in a major way. And, the only way to do that, like I'm saying, is to run naked through the forest and cut yourself and bleed and cry and find yourself freezing and hope that someone saves you when no one's going to save you. You got to figure it out and get back before you get eaten by the bear. And that's real. And life should not be any different than that. Because if it was, there'd be no purpose for it. That's just me. I'm crazy.
Well said.
This is the advice he gave me when we met when I was 16. I'm still naked and afraid. To this day. Here is your companion.
Yeah, Brian's a funny dude, right? He's what a great supporter of the arts, especially psychedelic arts. And I can remember hanging out with him the first few times. We definitely had some fun hangout sessions. But in terms of like my art stuff, we had been doing different collaborative projects, and he got us all to come paint together in what he wanted to do, the setting he wanted in the set. It's so funny. He showed up with lawn chairs and a 12-pack, like it was a football game, to watch paint dry. What a lunatic. He's got a lot of great ideas, and he's put all these people together. So I thank him for that. And yeah.
Chambers Project.
Not only was he the only one, he brought a whole bunch of people, and they all turned out to sit there and watch paint dry.
That's what GMO's done it.
It's a whole new thing. Amazing. Yeah, well, I want to talk a little bit more about this particular show because for me, one of the biggest things I focus on in working with people's nervous systems when trying to create a pattern interrupt, it's just basically okay, this is my subconscious patterning, this is my default mode network. How do I create a powerful enough pattern interrupt, which psychedelic can do for sure, that will bust me out of my fabrication and into something more expansive? And I was just curious if you guys could talk a little bit about this Optidelic, because for me, it creates a pattern interrupt. There's there's patterns, but one of the things about looking at these pieces is that instead of my brain just like, this is the normal stuff I see, and so it's like filtering out most everything and filling in the blank for me, your brain can't fill in the blank with this stuff. You know, you stand in front of one and you get really present. Like it brings you right here, right now, like a portal into this moment.
These are portals. Gems are portals.
Yeah, I love working with portals. This is my work behind me, these 3 pieces, and then the cone, the drippy cone. Very psychedelic. Optidelic, I think, is an amazing name because it's like, you know, mixing optical illusion with psychedelia and all this like crazy fantasy world. I guess in my artwork, I love just pulling ideas from the psychedelic world and like wormholes and portals and mixing like science with outer space and like past lives and that spiritual world. So that's a little bit of my inspiration. Yeah, and color theory and how like shapes and colors interact neurologically. Just having certain shapes that are static seem like they're moving and flowing in front of you and all that fun stuff.
You're amazing. I can't get enough of that mirror. Huh. And I want to wear the cone as a dunce cap when I'm playing next. Well, as someone, like I said, as someone who can't draw anything, I've always wanted to. I journal all the time and I'll scribble in it, but as from the sound aspect, something that Colin back there dropped on me this morning, it was like, think about the op art patterns and the waveforms in your music. And I was like, yeah, you know, cymatics, obviously most of you are familiar with cymatic patterns and nature and pattern recognition as something inherent in human evolution, especially for a neurotic Jew. So many patterns I recognize it and fucking lose my mind and go back to the same thought 10 trillion times until I can't sleep. But I am excited that in my evolution as a music person, I started seeing, you know, cymatic patterns, a metal plate, dump a bunch of salt on it, and without plugging anything in, you could take a bow for a cello or a violin and stroke the bow down the side of the metal, and nylon on metal with one stroke shifts the salt in 4 different directions, and it kind of separates it from the middle of the plate, and then you stroke it a few more times. I'm milking a cow. You stroke it a few more times, and then depending on the vibratory frequency that you're creating with the bow, it creates the same patterns and shapes that we see in nature. No computers, no electronics needed at all. It's totally electroacoustic, like I don't know the correct term. I've just so amazing to me personally that the waveforms in my music are the same patterns that you see with cymatics, and also sound, frequency, vibration, and energy created matter. In my opinion, I do believe that the world was created. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. These are the first few lines of the ancient scripts, and that idea of speaking your reality into existence and positive self-talk versus negative self-talk, like the science and spirituality intersection is becoming more and more accepted, even though those of us who study ancient cultures understand that this is just the truth and it's fundamental. Mathematics is the language of the universe, and these things all correlate together. So I love wielding the power of sound, frequency, vibration, and energy as my purpose on earth, especially because that vulnerability and authenticity that comes with somebody weaving a tapestry of songs that aren't supposed to go together and inspiring a group of people, whether it be IRL or URL, is like the closest thing you could do to actually being of service. Like you were saying, you can't, self-mastery is the only way to become worthy of being a helper. You can't be a frazzled fraggle and offer your assistance to another, you know, lost soul. You're not going to be able to. Well, that's what's happening a lot, is there are people that they don't have the suffering balance in their account to teach anyone anything, but that's okay. I'm not going to get negative. But I will say, I looked at Mear. I will say that as a music person, these patterns show up in my waveforms depending on the frequency that I tune my kick drums to, the bass line that I'm playing, the vocal toning that I'm doing. It's all showing up with a visualizer exactly like these patterns. So it's, closest thing to God that I've ever found in my life. So I feel that outside of religion, it's the most undeniable truth in the universe.
Yeah. Well, this is my piece over here, and I don't know if it's so optidelic. I tried. I'm not much of an optidelic artist yet. I'm a psychedelic artist. I'm all these other things. But Brian challenged me, do your first opt art piece. But what I feel from it is we're looking at a lot of pattern here, and it's really pleasing for the non-initiated just to look at it and gaze upon pattern in general, whether it's psychedelic or sober or not knowing, that it just comes off as something very pleasing to feel. And I think that's because, really when it comes down to it, that's what we are. We are a pattern, We have this pattern built into us, at a microscopic level, built on top of pattern, and we look at our cities and their patterns, and you look at our history and it's a pattern, and you look at our geological history as a pattern too. So I think that the psychedelic trip is kind of like, it's showing you that like there's not just one language to describe something with, there's so many infinite ways. And this is just one of the ways of expressing that pattern that we all are inherently, in a sense, that's found everywhere. Yeah, I don't know.
Real quick about op art, that I find I've been interested in it but pretty much my whole life. I just find it so fascinating. When it's done really successfully, in my mind, is where something like eye fry, where you get the red and the blue. If you get the right two colors next to each other and then they vibrate, you could do hot pink and certain greens do it. And sometimes with the black and white stuff, the most interesting thing is that space where the art is breaking your nervous system. That's what's happening. It's like, it cannot do it. And that to me that's op art. It's where it's like, whoa, what's happening here? It's hitting the limits of human perception. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes when you do psychedelics, you pass those limitations. You see things. I'll give you an example that I find crazy. So, how when you close your eyes and you imagine an object, some of us can really see the object, right? And some of us can't. Like, it's just kind of a black space. You sort of imagine it, but you can't really see the thing. So I'm one of those people. But when I take acid and I close my eyes, I see in 10K. It's the craziest thing. And I would never know about a mind's eye visualizations had I never done that. I would have just, thought that my brain was like, we all have the same kind of brain thinking the same way. But I've always thought that was a really weird thing where it's like, something I can't do in my normal life, I can do in that space. And I don't know what's happening. It's unlocking some thing that's there, right? It's there. I just can't use it in my everyday life. But it's very interesting. Yes.
10K. Yeah, I think that I was just at the beach with my kids and having this experience, because every time with psychedelics, it's like remembering, but it's like remembering my true nature, that I am nature. And it's so to be at the beach and watch the water wash up and leave just the most epic patterns over and over, and then just destroy them and make new ones. But all of these patterns, if you sit in nature, you spend time in nature, you see these, right? They're everywhere. And so I think that's such a key portal as well, back into ourselves and into nature. But Thank you. I want to open it up for questions. I know you have a question.
Could you tell me a little more about this group?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Zendo project. Yeah, we've been around for over a decade. We were actually originally started as a department for the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies as their harm reduction project, because they're working to legalize MDMA for therapeutic uses, but they thought it was very important to also be talking about how are we reducing harms and educating people about psychedelics. So we started out at MAPS, and we were at MAPS for about a decade, and then in 2022 we separated from MAPS. We became our own nonprofit. So we've been a nonprofit now for about 2.5 years. And we basically do two major things. We go out to events and provide a sanctuary. We work with medical and rangers and take care of folks who come in who are having any sort of emotional difficulty, be that from psychedelics or their boyfriend broke up with them or they're overstimulated, really anything. So it's a sanctuary space. It's all volunteers. So we train our volunteers how to sit with somebody and basically just be a presence for them through their experience. And then additionally, we have an education program. So we educate folks on how to provide psychedelic care and peer support. And, and the skill set, like I said, it's a very basic skill set of how do we support each other through difficult times. And it's really a skill set that any of us can use. We can use it in parenting. We can use it in being a friend, it's applicable in many settings. So that's what the Zendo Project does.
Is it zendoproject.com?
Zendoproject.org. .org. Yeah, and we have a huge local community here. There is lots of Zendo Project people even in this room. So if you're interested in knowing more, feel free to come chat with me about it afterward.
Yeah.
I have a question for some guy. I have brain damage, so I forget your name, but you took over the artist show.
Yeah.
What was his interpretation of that? When you were doing DJing and then everybody turned to you and started the show.
I still don't fit in anywhere. I live in a really nice part of LA, very quiet mountain near Jen and near Mear, just opposite mountains, and I don't feel like I belong anywhere. So part of me always thinks that people just don't like me or don't resonate with me. And Shepard Fairey invited me to DJ his show, and I thought maybe it was this kid's always around and let me throw him a bone. But 22 years later, I just played Shepard Fairey's biggest retrospective show of his life. He hired me again and paid me less than the first time. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. I did it for free because I'm a baller. But yeah, I really thought that what I was doing was background music, and it was a really powerful lesson to be accepted by the people that had never heard of me and came just to look at his pieces. It felt like acceptance, belonging, appreciation. I felt like maybe I could do this work professionally one day. So it really was the perception. I think it's an ADHD. I got a touch of the tism too. It's very weird to think that people don't like you just maybe because they don't fucking smile your direction or so. Everybody's going through shit in their head. Why would you think, there's a righteous indignation and vengeance that comes with ADHD and mental illness as well. And I've, been trying to self-diagnose because I'm, not into the process of healthcare in this country. Unfortunately, it's been very challenging to get someone with my insurance to help me. So I've been really digging deep and doing my own studies. And it is a fact that people with these disorders always think that they did something wrong. And so I still have that after all these years. And for Shepard to kind of lend me his hand and lend me his ear, and then the audience not knowing who the hell the 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid with dreads was doing in the first place when they could have just put an iPod on or played a CD or something or had a band. Shepard is really into rock music, but it was like the most life-affirming moment for me as a young, creative person. And we're still friends, and I'm still super grateful that I was invited, so thank you for your question.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
I don't have a question for you, but I am wondering how do we reconcile this? Because I really strongly believe that Mear-One, like I said, this even mediations and from an anthropological perspective, this is really interesting.
Yeah.
Particularly in California, where Ventura is really important. Building into very historic rock architectura associations down around Bakersfield area. And what we were seeing was a lot like I think what you're talking about, which is these incredibly isolated, terrifying kinds of experiences, possibly with no community support. We don't really know that. You know, from an anthropological perspective, and not as well to discuss things in the so then. But that whole experience really seems to be contextualized in mythos and ceremony because very holistic sense of society. So on the one hand, you have all of these young individuals experiencing this cathartic terror. And on the other hand, you have a whole society really understands this. So it's this, I think what I really want to say is really, we need to see this conversation between this juxtaposition of we need to care for our people and we need to be terrified.
Yeah.
We need a near-death experience to wake up and realize that that we need to take ourselves seriously because there's too many people with empty minds walking around and we're corralled. Society is like sheep being corralled around. And something he tapped on earlier, anything that's organizable, when you can organize something, it is corruptible. There's no escaping that. There's no corrupting the independence, the individual. And when you run into other individuals, you have the real true life God-given experience to make a choice for yourself whether you want to engage with this person or not, or whether you want to move on to the next. And you don't need a structure to kind of set parameters or give you any ideas of what it should be. It should be up to you to judge for yourself. Because once again, you were born alone, you're going to die alone. And no one's going to be there for you when you're dying. I mean, they might be, but they're not going on that journey with you.
Yeah, they can't do it for you.
No, they can't do it for you. And I mean, that's what's fucked up about this world. We should be celebrating our death because it's like the elevator ride to the next reality. One door closes, another one opens up. When we were born, we came from somewhere else. We're full of memory. I mean, when we take psychedelics, we tap into that memory instantaneously. And it's very emotional and powerful and profound, life-changing. I'm all for people loving each other and helping. I'm not trying to say nothing like that. All I'm saying is that I think that when it comes to serious, heavy-duty, life-altering things like psychedelics, organization is extremely dangerous because you do not want somebody else giving their thoughts into your mind at that moment. You're there to experience life as yourself. You're having a conversation with God, and you don't. What the problem is in this world is we got all these interpreters. We got all these middlemen, the priest, the doctor, the lawyer, all these people that are already set up to handle it for you. And what does that leave us? We're going to become Wally World. The hunter-gatherer, we were powerful, intelligent, spiritual beings. We built pyramids with that kind of mentality. We don't know how the hell they did that shit anymore because we've been educated and we've been institutionalized and everything's been legalized for us. And it comes with a set of rules. And I mean, yeah, that's about it.
Now, I want to add a little bit to that.
Nice to be able to ask for help, though.
Yeah, so I think to your question, what I really love about what you're asking, and I think what Mear was pointing to is, at least in my experience, is I very much believe that the only people who can ever heal, or the only person who can heal you is you, right? Nobody can heal you. Nobody can do it for you, just like no one's going to die for you or be born for you. And the difference between therapy, which is, again, it's kind of like one of those, it's putting an authority. If you are not the authority in your life, you're fucked. Just straight up, right? Because if you haven't taken the reins and said, I'm going to be the executive, I'm going to be the author, I'm going to be the creator of what I do today and tomorrow and how I decide to see this situation. And if you haven't come into contact with something, life is full of the full spectrum, right? Humans, it's the full hue. You get everything. There is no one-sided world. And if you think there is, then you're blind, half blind, right? Because life is the full spectrum. And I think that's one of the most powerful aspects of a true psychedelic is it isn't a one-sided happy camp. It's a fucking full ride. You get to experience both the full rapture and the full horror of where we are and what we're up to in this massive experience. And when it comes to like what Zendo's doing is they are saying, we're not your therapist. All we're going to do is create a space in case shit gets really tough. And if you land here, great, right? But no one's going to drag you in there and no one's going to ask you how you doing, right? That's antithetical to the principles, right? So I think that to answer that question a little bit is like, yeah, no one can do it for you. You got to do it on your own. And it's sometimes, especially I think for people who are being initiated out of having like no experience, to have a safe and potent place where that can happen can be really potent.
Yeah, and I think that's true. It really speaks. There's just a lack of education. You know, there's lots of young kids that are going out to these events and they have no idea what they're getting themselves into. And so, you know, and even when they get themselves there, we still believe it's possible for that experience to be beneficial, but it really means us getting out of the way and just creating that safe space. So the skills we teach are non-directive or inner, you know, we're giving space for their inner guide to lead the way. And that's why I say it's really not about, it's about not doing anything. So how do we learn to not do anything, but just to be there, just to be present? So yeah, I think, and then I think the other piece, that's like the peer-to-peer care is that you aren't in a position of power over somebody. You're a peer who's had similar difficult experience in life as we all have, and you're just there. So, yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think true. You know, is it? Yeah, no, I think I think I've sought out help before, and I think what has always attracted me to the person that's given me help is that person that wasn't advertising for it. They were glowing, and I cut through the crowd and found them, and it was cathartic, and they helped me. I mean, I was in Mexico at some Bitcoin event, and like I am right now, I threw my back out down there, and I had to paint that evening, and I met this trippy dude, this roadside vagabond suitcased healer. And he just walked right up to me and goes, "You looks like you're in pain." He's like, "Hold my hands. I want you to visualize a red 3-dimensional box around your feet, and let's raise it up through your body and start rotating around your solar plexus around the area as if you're submerged within that red box." And I wanted to get hot, and he took me through this process. And when we were done, I felt like 95% better, and I went on to paint live art that night. And it's just amazing how that dude saw me and just recognized that I was like, ouch, and he just came right to me and instantaneously, by holding my hands and talking to me, healed me and just walked away. And that was it. Never saw him again. So there is that. And I'm all good with that. I guess my only thing is just this organization of legality. And I just think about what's happened with marijuana in California especially, and the economy that we created for ourselves as artists and dealers and growers and smokers and trippers, that we created a culture that got co-opted by basically like the Marlboroians, and we can see where it's at now. So I worry about the legalization of psychedelics severely, and I see that pharmaceutical companies can come in with psychedelics and really fuck our heads up like we've never been fucked up before. I mean, already since the 1980s, most of society is psychotic from the meds that they've been put on. And in one form or another, in what the air we're breathing, the fluoride in our water, all of these things that, come from this organization, these rules and whatnot. So that's my only take on it, is just the anti-authority, independent spirit of freedom, and that cathartic spiritual life seeker, to find that, And other than that, I'm always seeking out the healers and whatnot.
Yes. I would just wanted to add one more component to what happens in recreational environments. A lot of times when there aren't services, like, there isn't a mental health component to first response at events in a lot of places. And so what ends up happening is that folks who appear to be in distress, and often you really can't assume what somebody's internal world is. They might appear distressed on the outside, and inside they're having an incredible time. We really don't know. But what happens if they end up in medical care? Sedated. What happens if they end up in law enforcement? Restrained. So we're really, the intention really is to come in and curb some of those harmful effects that can happen as a result of there really not being a component of mental health or peer-based care in most of those, festival environments. So.
Okay, we'll do one more question. Who's it going to be? Okay, go.
But it's like us two guys as an artist, there's a concept and within culture about the role of the artist in society, but this isn't something that I see a lot in this room, particularly in New York and in us. But for many of the things, it's just and this idea that the artist should bring kind of inspiration and it's the highest message to society and to, whatever the artist's job is to then synthesize their experience, applying them to bring a real kind of gem to say, that's something I see very much in the art here. And I'm sort of wondering also, and I think there's been this discussion about the youth and the future and festival culture and everything. And I just feel that there's some kind of connective answers there, and I'm just sort of walking me to find it something about it.
Just real quick, I'll just say that that's what inspiration is. That we share it. Like everything in here is sending inspiration out to us. So,
again, thanks for that. Again,
I don't know. I don't have any answers for anything really. So I think there's going to be, things become other things, and there's going to be, some 16-year-olds are out there coming up with the new festival culture, whatever it is. I don't know what it is. I'm sure it's going to be surprising and shocking, and I can remember in my 20s, 20s, something like that, when the jungle music and drum and bass came out. I love jungle music so much, but it's just crazy, right? And it's like a lot of the same breakbeat, and I especially love it when it's like square pusher shit. And I remember listening to it thinking, man, what would my grandmother think if I played this for her, right? It would be uncomprehendable. It just sound like utter noise. And now I'm that age where a lot of this shit sounds like noise to me. But I try to be like, okay, it must be cool. There's something there because, young people are energetic about it and whatever. Yeah. I don't know. Something cool will come along and psychedelic culture will keep going, and it'll go in these ways that are unpredictable, and I hope it stays underground and cool. And it's not for everybody, obviously. You got to say that. It's not for everybody, okay? I'm not condoning anything, but,
to a different part of your point, the best artists for my taste are at the highest level of suffering there can be for a human. They're not leaders by example by any means, but somehow they stood the test of time. Their art stood the test of time, their music. Like there's a level of you are your art to your own detriment. And so when they say in today's generation, you have a platform, that's not my fucking fault or my problem. I started an Instagram because I need gigs. I didn't start it to be a voice of truth. My lens of perception is covered in shit, not mud. And it's from my suffering, and I try to clean my lens with a good plant medicine ceremony from time to time to avoid being stuck in that self-describing horror. And then I wipe it clean and I go, and the next day I'm like, I found the answers, I'm enlightened. And then a year later, I'm back right the fuck with that same shit smeared lens. And the fact that people want to hear what I have to say through my channels is a fucking miracle. And I'm not leading them astray because I'm not leading them. They chose to listen. They chose to absorb, take it with a grain of salt, just like I do with everything that I enjoy. It has no, it's not a merit-based system. Oh, one more thing, if we really are going to close, I have a brand new album in that merch area with the coolest op art you've ever seen. Just saying, I am poor, and my records are not expensive, and they're fucking awesome looking pieces of art by Cryptic.
Just on that note, I feel like as artists, we're here to just like translate our inner worlds, and sometimes they can be dark, sometimes they can be beautiful and light, but I feel like the past that we're creating our worlds in such a different way that even just by doing what we're doing, we're inspiring people to like pursue their passions. And that's one of my favorite parts of art, like showing also like girls and women that like you can follow your dreams and like be an artist. And I think that's a really cool part of it for me. But
It's good.
Right. Well, thank you all so much. This was beautiful, and just the piece that I'm really like leaving with is this sense of individuation, where there's something about each of you as an artist and as just in your art that is the kind of humans that we actually need, is the people who are willing to just do the thing they're doing and do it because they love it and create things that inspire others to do the same. So thank you and enjoy the show.
Great.